就会忏悔，历代一切众生惭愧忏悔，所有认妄为真，生生世世追随烦恼、效正烦恼、自困自惑、自残自害的恶业因缘习气与诸恶誓愿。惭愧忏悔，历代一切众生惭愧忏悔，所有的随声妄想、造作妄语来致形成坚固的万事的恶业因缘习气与诸恶誓愿。祈愿仰仗上师三宝及一切诸不可思议解脱境界菩萨摄持，速证妙观察智，尚能如所如说观察所有妄想感觉业障，观察它的升起发展消亡的详细现象，因缘知道它是那么虚无缥缈，知道它是一切苦的根本，从此不再被它牵引着毫无意义的追随去造让自己受苦的业。当下即能知情，当下即能做到，不随分别世间业果正生三者相续，三缘淡故，三因不生。心真眼若达多，款性自歇，即证菩提，并愿一切众生不皆得。感恩上师佛的世子后，祈愿一切众生皆能具足因缘和能力，闻师说法，因机醒悟，恒因佛智，念念觉悟，事事觉悟，时时觉悟，处处觉悟。愿此誓愿等真如具足极大的欢喜信心大圆满精进力，不乱专一的念，固定成自己的一部分，生成智慧，巧妙巧正生根基。感恩上师佛于此堪忍世界真的慈悲陪伴，当然誓愿快速圆满具足您这样的便如分的耐性，与我等此恶有情之难行能行，能为说法。但惭愧忏悔，依的一切恶有情众生惭愧忏悔，由于欲尽其诸未顺，敬被爱行而生增记造整整业，乃至于上师三宝所悲信弃义，无惭无愧，无有恭敬，诸正所常轮回生死。水深捞月万万年，生生世世追逐那虚无缥缈，劳民伤财，耗神费力，苦乐无常，颠倒无尽，没意思。感恩上师佛的世子后，祈愿一切众生皆能具足因缘和能力，闻师说法，因机醒悟，恒依佛智，念念觉悟，时时觉悟，时时觉悟，处处觉悟。愿此誓愿尽未来际遇上师三宝的善缘，如同真如自信，永恒清净自在，坚固不坏。与诸佛及佛所认可的善知识，善缘如同真如自信，永恒清净自在，坚固不坏。感恩上师佛的慈悲摄受，感恩所有善因缘没有舍弃我，惭愧忏悔，一代一切众生惭愧忏悔，犯病了还不自知的无明愚痴，祈愿一切众生皆能闻师说法，因机醒悟。但今觉誓愿具足因缘和能力，速证如所如说，随教而行。于诸和尚20里所耳，尚能感恩欢喜的恭敬供养增正赞叹，随教而行，除舍乔莽速速教诲。于正法真生起要想，于和尚20里所生起佛想，于自身所起病人想，于说法者起名因想，为积佛法不爱生命，于诸财物一波之余起老结想，时时一碗法师药，但这个病人坚决誓愿感恩欢喜的增益者服药，远程离垢得法眼净，托念力服服归元真。八本名药，摩尼宝珠随显逍遥自在为法王。愿此誓愿等真如具足极大的欢喜信心大圆满精进力，不乱专一的念，固定成自己的一部分，生成智慧，巧妙巧正生根基。继续训法语，六根对六尘的妙处，为什么叫妙？因为自己认为好，感受好，但从究竟处，从真实处来说，那就是苦，因为我发病了。在发病状态中，我认为的什么舒服不舒服，那都是发神经发病，纯粹是我心意识上的东西啊，也就是我的一个妄想而已啊，它根本不是什么舒服和好过。那啥叫入戏很深呢？就演着演着，以为自己是个什么什么什么什么东西了，就是以为自己就是那个角色了，那叫很浅，那是很浅，很深就是这个我呀，我是淡了，就入戏很深了，就整个淡就是表现。不知道但只是个角色，以为就是自己，这个名字就是自己，这个身体就是自己，这个人就是自己，妄想就是自己，他不可能是别人。入戏很深，就彻底不知道自己是什么了。真正的那个我，真正的我是那个灵性。入戏深了之后，就光知道怎么编、怎么导、怎么演，而且那个就是自己，就困在世界里的老人。 实际就是个神情，我只是个演戏者，那只是个戏，还把这个戏也当个真，还把自己这个角色也当个真呢，而且真的坚定的认为就是这个，这是入戏很深的标志，也是病入膏肓的标志，快死了，牺牲自己，反正都是要死了嘛，牺牲自己成就别人。这个是最容易不被三战所障碍的，因为我就是个三战，这我一牺牲，把三战都跟着牺牲了。观察当下的，观察当下的烦恼是什么？知道烦恼的败坏能力，觉悟烦恼的虚妄性，无非都是妄想，由此必然趋向败坏一切的好。心为根本，所以必须时刻的这些智慧现前，发现问题就马上惭愧忏悔发芽，恶习自然就会慢慢的转变，善根早日就慢慢的萌芽。一旦恶习好了，善根发芽了，那修什么都必然无障碍的成就了。这里啊，由此必然趋向败坏一切的好，只要有烦恼在，由此必然趋向败坏一切的好。那我自己从自己身上去找两个哈，很容易就能马上就能觉察到的。第一就是心情，如果是说你一随烦恼，心情马上就坏了。不管你当下的心情，你是想学习还是不想学习，你是想吃还是不想吃，你是一下子从那种欢喜的心一下变成不高兴了，反正就是不高兴了。不管是有因无因，反正就是不高兴了。这时候心情是不是就坏了？这时候知道一定是烦恼起来了。那还有一个就是我们在吃的时候。如果是说哈，随顺我们的那个熏习，我们的那个食，认为好吃，这个好吃，这个对身体健康，因为这些它就会冒啊，就是说这个可以多吃一点，因为它对身体有好处。但是我们的神是不需要这些东西的，我们的神真的是不吃这东西的，我们吃了这些东西只会把我们的神害着三明五道的。三明五道的这个词啊，这个词是我说的。那因为真正这个词是什么意思，我到现在都不是太清楚。这是我不知道到底这是普通话还是东北话，反正就是迷迷糊糊的意思，就是我们的那个神呢、如果是说我们搞得没神了，有的时候吃的这个人就眼睛真的是眼睛没神，眼睛有神跟没神，我们真的看得出来的。然后呢，我们就是听书都好，哪怕就是看你最爱看的电视剧都好，你都会打瞌睡啊。然后这是为什么？这是因为把我们的神搞得三迷五道的，说的，把我们神搞得三迷五道的，他要去干什么？他要急人精力去消化呀。我们这个皇上乱搞，然后呢，你看啊，身体里面他什么都要管，他要管循环系统呐，他要管消化系统呐。他要管所有的那些内分泌系统呢，他要管身体里面就是，呃，反正就是你吃进去了以后，你你你这个你什么都不管了，你这皇上什么都不管了，然后呢，他要把一切都要打理的好好的，然后他可忙可忙了，他真的可忙可忙了，我们搞那么多东西进去，搞的就是他在那里的工作量排的满满的，所以我们根本就是真的是无暇顾及其他的了。他要把所有的精力全部放在消化上面去了呀。然后我们这时候学习也好，或者是工作也好，或者是听讲也好，是不是就没神了？当我们真的是眼睛是没神的那种，然后自己无精打采没神的时候，我们知道是自己又在害我们的神了。为什么？因为随身我们的习气，随身我们的好吃，随身我们的舒服。随着我们认为的健康吃，这些呀，全都是邪见的，没有一个是正见的。真的，我们认为说，这个好吃这个吃了对身体有好处，全都是邪见的。因为真正来讲，这个身体非常非常的精密，是一个非常精密的仪器啊。因为我们真正身体缺什么，我们神会去帮我们搞好的。就是比如说我们在启动我们的免疫系统，然后我们的巨噬细胞出来行动的时候，那它会把我们身体的那些垃圾全部扫光、扫清以后，变化成什么？变化成我们身体缺乏的这种东西出来。我们所谓的缺这个营养素，缺那个营养素， 真的无非就是自己搞的。第一就是你看哈，我们吃精致食物，吃超加工食物，昨天看到了，其实上这些东西是没有营养的。然后呢，我们就要启动我们的储备，就是说我们身体里面有储藏一些营养，然后要把那些拿出来用掉，来抵消这些吃进去的所谓的超级食品，是不是越吃这些就越没营养，越没营养，然后我们是不是越缺乏了？这一切，那我们的神会安排这一切。比如说我们就说有的时候是在超高温的状况下，或者是说低温、高温、低温的，就是离开我们的舒适的温度啊。我们身体舒适温度是多少啊？就是说我们大概是在25度吧，25度正负2度或者正负2度，那正负5度已经很多了。25度正负2度的时候，这时候我们身体是感觉是很舒适的。那我们离开这个很舒适的温度，或者是高或者是低的时候，就是在这种所谓的极端的天气啊，当然死不了人了哈。这种状态下的时候，我们的那个巨噬细胞它会行动的，也就是我们断食18个小时以后，它会启动，然后在这样子的一个高温低温状态下，它会启动，还有在我们的运动量，就是啊、超出我们平常这样子运动量的这种运动下，它会启动。然后呢，这些就是说这种状况下会启动我们的这个免疫系统，巨噬细胞会开始出来工作。它工作，它这时候会怎样？会扫清我们身体的一些垃圾，然后把它变化成我们身体需要的那些元素、那些营养。所以这样子的话，你看啊，它都安排。然后所说到的，我们说缺这个补这个，缺那个补那个，吃进去以后真的会就是这个东西吗？他说我们的胃酸是个强酸呢，这个强酸在强酸的那个作用下，这个酸它是起一种化学反应的，它不是物理反应哦。物理反应的话，比如说我们是水跟冰转化，它里面的东西还没有变，它的成分没变，它只是它的形状变了，它从液体变成固体了。那它反过来，它还能冰变成水，水就变成冰，它是不是可以转化呀、互换了？但是通过那个化学反应，在酸碱里面出来东西以后，这是个化学反应呢，它根本不是我们要吃的那个东西了。那我们说我们要补成什么吃这个补这个，吃那个补那个，经过胃酸以后，它会变成什么了？那是不是我们要的呢？所以说，是我这样说，这样子认为的话，其实上都是邪见的。然后呢，那当我们是神，当我们是神哈，我们就不讲是神，就是当我们害的那个神在那里三明五道的应暇不暇，就是说无暇应接这些的时候，我们知道我们真的是又在贪吃了，又在贪吃了啊！那这些是不是必然趋向败坏一切的好啊？而我们的神，是不是说它是有生有灭的，它是有限有量的。它一旦完了的时候，我们就要去做孤魂野鬼了。我们这个国君，我们这个国主就要亡国了。这个身体一旦没有神了以后，是住不了的。你住里面是住不了的，没人给你打理这个国土了。那谁来搞？你自己又不会。所以说我在讲，他说你自己想一想，当你身体缺乏什么，然后呢，你要分泌多少激素，你要调节你整个的那个生命，就是说生命运作，消化系统、循环系统，然后呢，你所有的整个里面的一套系统，你自己又不会，全部要由神来帮你安排好这一切，控制好这一切，管控好这一切。一旦他死了以后，没人打理了，那这个国土就住不了了。那已经是一个死的了，有一片废墟了，它很快就会烂掉的。那你就只能弃这个国土了，然后就去飘零了。那你就想想哈，那我们就想到，就是说，如果自己家里面那垃圾没有到什么一片狼藉，还没有多大感觉。但是你就想想一个城市哈，假如是说一个城市突然哪一天那个清洁工罢工不工作了。那是不是你走到城市里面，你还能走啊？这个城市一片废墟啊！ 真的是到处都是那种垃圾流出来的那些水啊，然后整个城市是不是啊？那你就是哪个系统真的哪个系统不运作的时候，你看上去这个是不是一片狼藉啊？你觉得怎么过呀？这还能生活吗？那如果哪一天我们的神他不工作了的时候，我们这个身体真的他马上就开始烂的。你看啊，我们一旦哪里就说哪一套系统哪里出问题的时候，是不是身体马上就这样子啊？你看我们的那个肾那里一旦说它过滤不好的时候，是不是那人呐、整个人就要整站起来呀、那不去做透析的时候，这人还能活命呢？那一旦我们哪一天我们的神他真的没力气搞啊，他要死的时候完神的时候，我们就要去飘零了，做孤魂野鬼了。这些，然后这都从哪里来？都是我们自己吃了害他的。所以那个尼古拉特斯拉那一句话，他真的说穿了。他说天下所有的厨师都要来害我，都想害我，那就是吃。他说身体这个东西太精密了，是个精密仪器，不需要吃的，不需要这个东西去喂养它的，你只会把它搞坏，一吃就把它搞坏。因为他太厉害了，是不是说？他说他是可以瞬间跟任何地方联网的，所以他说他这一块他一联网，他一看，他说诸位不想看，他一想看的话，他一联网，他一切都清清楚楚。他那句话真的是说穿了，说透了。身体，我们这身体是个很精密的仪器，它不需要这个东西，它不需要吃这个东西。那我们现在吃是为了什么？那佛教我们吃是为了要跟正生结缘，那就是说化来正生与佛的缘呢。那我们在吃的时候，你看你我就是说这个制定的这个离的10万8千里，那吃无非是什么？无非就是为了害自己，为了为了害自己，那由此必然败坏一切的好啊。然后我们心情就要随顺妄想的时候，心情马上坏。不管你怎样，反正心情马上坏。你一旦发现心情马上变了，本来学的可来劲，突然不想学了，怎么都不想学，学不下去了，那是不是坏了呢？本来学的热火朝天的，学的可来劲，在里面学的可来劲，突然没劲了，为什么？烦恼起来了。那自己就可以跟着这些看，是那是什么起来了？观察当下的烦恼是什么，知道它的败坏能力，觉悟烦恼的虚妄性，会都是妄想啊。你看我这个时间来的太多了，然后呢，好，从这些点上面，是否告诉我们，当下我们马上就能做到的，就是去练慈眉善目的微笑脸了。那好，我们现在知道了，他告诉我们，我们现在就是说瞬间就可以去做，就能做到的，就是去练观世菩萨的那个慈眉善目的微笑脸呐。好，这样子的话呢，其实上我们真的是瞬间就可以做到，因为一念心瞬间做到。21天是一个固化期，所以是我最后就说到了20天就可以拿出来用的，不会比它差。念21天嘛。那好，那我们现在马上转到关于视频，就是博格医生教我们这些视频这块吃这块。昨天呢，我们是在这里在讲到吃什么可以抵消碳水，吃糖和碳水带来的影响，吃什么可以抵消哈？那我们昨天只是讲了一个点，也就是吃糖跟碳水，那怎么样补救？那昨天讲到吃糖和碳水了以后呢，就要吃纤维，要吃纤维去抵消。然后那我们现在看一下哈，那个碳水，比如说米面，然后糖，因为米跟面它的碳水，它最终都是转化成糖。那糖，我们说的糖，有的时候还吃不了那么多，太腻了。但是吃米面做成的食物的时候，那口感上面感觉不是糖的感受，但是它最终的结果都还是变成糖。那我们现在来看一下米和面的真相哈。这里我打开了几个视频，我跟你上去，我不知道时间来不来得及看完哈。一个是面，为什么就是说为什么不能？你看完这个，他说可能不再吃面包了，为什么？对面粉的一些真相的了解。然后呢，有人说那我吃米呢？这也就是说 那米饭和小麦，就是面粉里哪个更健康？那是平。然后一个就是，这就是，那既然面是不好，因为全世界都在吃呢，那为什么意大利人又很长寿呢？因为意大利人也吃面了，很有名的那个意大利面啊，pasta 呀，spaghetti 呀，那是不是啊？意大利人的面做的就是说很出名的，他们为什么又能长寿呢？好，我们等一下一个个来看哈。好，这里是损害肝的7种食物。那我们知道，我们肝一旦因为肝它在病变的时候，开始的时候我们是一点都没有感觉的，没有痛感的。然后一旦到痛的时候，那已经到晚期了。那那那那伤肝的7种食物是什么呢？我们避开就是什么黑名单，我们就是说这是黑名单。然后呢，还有就是10种假食品，他说10种假食品，你不要再买了，不会再买了。然后呢，那好，这里呢，你看哈，好，到时候再来讲油吧。那我们现在先来看面粉的那个真相哈。
Now, I do know that even at hinting at this idea of taking away someone's bread can stir up a lot of upset, emotion, resistance, etc. But I just want to challenge you to watch this video because the question is, why do people love bread so much? I mean, what is it about the bread that is so special that people like so much? Well, you're about to find out that there is a huge push to get everyone on this planet to eat more grains. The problem is we're already eating too many grains. There's a new term I want to introduce to you called health washing. Health washing is a term to describe giving certain claims to foods that are not necessarily true. I mean, everywhere you look, grains are natural, they're wholesome. Whole grains are a part of a healthy diet. I mean, they're high in fiber, which they actually are not as high in fiber as other foods. They're loaded in vitamins and minerals, and we won't talk about the anti-nutrient called phytase that blocks those minerals. And grains are heart healthy, and they can even help you lower your belly fat. But the problem is that most of these studies are surveys, they're questionnaires, they're not peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled clinical trials. And if they are, they're industry-sponsored studies. The point is that when we're continually told to consume 6 to 11 servings of grains as our foundation for our diet, one half of them being whole grains, the other can be refined grains, that's a tremendous amount of carbohydrates that are introduced to our diet. But today I'm going to talk about just one little tiny aspect of bread. Okay, I'm not going to talk about how it turns into sugar and it can cause weight gain. I want to focus just on this one little thing called gluten. Okay, now what is gluten? Gluten is the protein in a lot of grains, okay, especially wheat. And gluten is a term to describe various proteins within this category. And one of the proteins is called gliadin-derived opioid peptide. Okay, now what the heck is that? That is a protein that can create an opioid effect. So in other words, it can mimic morphine to a certain degree. Now, what are the effects of opioids? Well, right now we have a major problem around the world with opiate addiction and synthetic opioids, where it literally, like fentanyl, destroys people's lives. It's highly addictive. So just one thing an opioid will do is it'll increase endorphins, okay? Endorphins are internal body chemicals that make us feel good, that can help decrease pain, okay? And our bodies make endorphins. There's another term I want to introduce to you called exorphins, okay? An exorphin is an endorphin that can be triggered by food, okay? You consume certain things and it creates an endorphin effect. Now, this is very important to know because this is why you like bread so much. Bread stimulates endorphins. It gives you this euphoric feeling. It can stimulate appetite. That's why they serve you the bread before your meal. So you'll be hungrier and want to order more food. And so the reason why people love this bread is because it's altering our chemistry. It's increasing our endorphins, okay? Now, the problem is that it comes with a little bit of a package. You may have heard the celiac disease, which a person has a severe reaction to gluten, okay, in the GI tract. They're going to get the classic symptoms: diarrhea, bloating, and abdominal pain, okay, and a lot of other conditions too, like inflammation in the gut, eventual atrophy of the little villi or the little internal roots in your small intestine that are supposed to help you absorb food. Those become smaller and smaller to the point where they're just no longer there. So you have a major digestive problem. And the problem with celiac is it's very hard to diagnose unless you do a biopsy. And so you may say, well, I don't have celiac. I don't get diarrhea, bloating, abdominal pain when I consume bread. So what's the big deal? Well, there's something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And this is basically asymptomatic celiac. In other words, a person will have celiac without the symptoms of the digestive tract, at least without classical symptoms: diarrhea, bloating, abdominal pain. But they have other issues, okay? Because the problem is still occurring at your gut level. The damage is still being done on these villi. You're getting inflammation, you're getting atrophy that will eventually show up in other problems down the road. But you may not experience really any symptoms when you have bread. But what I want to do is I want to expand your awareness on some other symptoms that you may be experiencing that are connected, that you might not think are connected. Let's first talk about the mental connection, how it can affect your mental state. Well, first of all, it can create symptoms like ADD, depression, anxiety, and even autism. And I will put that research down below. It can even lead to things like schizophrenia, which I will put that study down below as well. The other problem is a permeability issue in your gut. So you've heard of leaky gut, right? Well, that is a condition where you have holes in your gut that's created by the inflammation because there's so much omega-6 fatty acids in bread and grains. Like if we were going to compare omega-3 to omega-6, it's like 1 to 22. So in other words, there's 22 times more omega-6 fatty acids than there is omega-3. So there's a lot of inflammation going on, which is going to create holes or permeability issues in your lower gut. And when you have holes, you allow proteins to go through and you create all sorts of immune reactions. And then you create allergies and eventually autoimmune problems, especially of the thyroid, like in Hashimoto's. And then another one is psoriasis, okay, which is an autoimmune condition. So we get damage to our intestine, and then we start getting malabsorption. We no longer absorb certain things, and that leads to vitamin and mineral deficiencies and a whole cascade of additional problems, which I'm not going to get into. Another common symptom is insomnia, which leads to fatigue. You may have brain fog. You may also become anemic because you can't absorb iron. And it can lead to digestive problems like GERD, which is a severe acid reflux, and headaches and migraines, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, sometimes when people live in America, they consume like a pizza, for example, and they feel very bloated, but then that bloating goes away. And maybe they go on a trip overseas. Maybe they go to Italy and they eat a pizza, but they don't react. And they're wondering, why can I eat grains in certain countries, but I cannot consume them in other countries like America? Well, one of the reasons is that when you ferment grains into bread or pizza dough or whatever, the fermentation, the microbes actually eat the protein. They start reducing the gluten considerably. So, for example, sourdough bread has a lot less gluten as other breads, and this is why they might not experience the bloating. And so in America, the way they make bread is they don't ferment it for 2 or 3 days. They maybe ferment it for like an hour or so, and so we retain the gluten. So the more gluten that a grain product has, the more you're going to have a problem with this. Now, the other point I want to bring up is that over the years, we've hybrid different grains like wheat to have more gluten, okay? And this is one additional problem. And then there's also additional problems too. When you enrich or fortify these flour products, especially bread, with synthetic vitamins and iron, A lot of people react to that as well. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that I'm just taking one aspect of grains, and that's gluten. But there's a lot of other additional problems as well. But I think even when people go off grains and they start the ketogenic plan, one huge reason why they might even feel so much better is not even necessarily the lowering of the carbohydrates. It is the abstinence of eating these grains that eliminate a lot of the inflammation that is going on in the gut and then all the associated symptoms. So I want to challenge you just to avoid eating bread, okay, for 1 week, okay? In fact, avoid all grains for 1 week and just see how you feel. And then the next week, go back to eating bread and grains and then see how you feel. And then compare these two and then decide whether it's worth it or not. Now, if you have not seen my video on sugar and how that affects the red blood cell, that's a real interesting video. I'm going to put that one up right here. Check it out.
好，那我们现在再看那个意大利。
part called Liguria, they live longer than any other region in Europe. And in Sardinia, which is the second largest island off the coast of Italy, in the blue zone, they also are tied with Japan as living the longest. Now, I just wanted to mention that I'm not saying that the entire country of Italy ranks higher than other countries as far as living longer, but these two areas definitely are at the top of the list. And another point that's interesting, out of over 1,000 residents aged over 105 years old, 951 of them are female, okay? That's 87.2%. This is because of estrogen. Estrogen can act as an antioxidant, thereby slowing down the free radical exposure and damage to the DNA in the mitochondria. So now I recently did a trip in Italy and I interviewed a lady from Sardinia. A lot of times when you read books or in the news, you hear about the blue zone, Sardinia, they have all sorts of opinions on what they eat. You're going to find out exactly what Sardinians eat. So there will be no more mystery. And I think you're going to be quite surprised at a couple things. But before I show you this interview, I want to talk about pasta. What's so different about the pasta in Europe and especially Italy? There's no glyphosate. In the US, they spray wheat with glyphosate. That's like the stuff they use in Roundup Ready. Now, in the US, it's not GMO, but it's still sprayed with glyphosate unless it's organic. But they don't use glyphosate in Italy. Now, the argument about glyphosate is that it doesn't affect our genes, okay? Well, it definitely affects microbes for sure, okay? And we have a lot of microbes living within our gut and throughout our body. In fact, we have over, I think it's like 100 trillion microbes living inside and around. It's about 5 pounds of microbial life. And this chemical can definitely affect the genetics of those microbes. And we depend on those microbes, and they depend on us, and they become part of us. So glyphosate can definitely create a lot of problems in your gut if you consume it. Also, the wheat used in pasta in Italy is not enriched, okay, with iron and synthetic vitamins. Iron is very oxidating and corrosive to our bodies. In fact, we don't really have a mechanism of getting rid of iron. So if it accumulates too much, it can create a lot of problems, especially in men, because men are not menstruating like women. But if you're a woman in postmenopausal, you're in risk of accumulating too much iron if you're consuming the wheat in the US. Now, the type of wheat that's used with pasta compared to bread is the durum wheat. It's a hard wheat, it's higher in protein, and it digests very slowly. Now, what's interesting about pasta, because it's so condensed, is that it will not spike your blood sugars initially, okay? And it has a glycemic index of 45 to 50 compared to bread, which is 70. However, here's the problem. Check your blood sugars in 2 or 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours, and it will definitely spike your blood sugar. So I am not recommending pasta. All I'm saying is the quality of pasta is a lot better in Italy compared to America. That's probably why people go to Italy and they eat pasta and they don't bloat. Now, let's go to my interview from the lady who lived in Sardinia. Okay, so we have this young lady here from Sardinia, and you were born there, right?
Yeah, I was born in Alghero, yes.
And when did you move from Sardinia?
When I was 20 years old.
20? Okay. And give me some examples of types of food that you eat in Sardinia.
We eat a lot of meat, some, pig meat. Yeah.
Fascinating. Is it more organic pig?
Pork meat. Yeah.
Wow.
Pork meat, fish.
Fish? What kind of fish?
It depends. Sea bream, sea bass, seashells.
How about lobster?
Lobster in the north.
Lobster,
yeah.
wow.
I love lobster.
And then vegetables?
Vegetables, of course.
Do they taste really good?
Artichokes.
Artichokes?
Many artichokes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Do they eat a lot of sugar there?
No, not too much sugar.
Wow.
Even the desserts, they are not.
No? And
The
then
sweets are not really sweet.
and then a little pasta, but not too much?
Not too much pasta. No.
Wow. And what about bread?
Yeah, we have a lot of bread.
A
very
little
good
bit or a
bread.
lot of it? A lot.
It depends, not too much. No.
Okay. And then olive oil?
Olive oil, yes, we've got very good olive oil in Sardinia as well. Different from the Tuscany one. Other things, we drink the mirto.
What is mirto?
Mirto is a kind of digestive. It's made with mild berries. It's a typical plant in Sardinia. It's
Wow.
really good.
And then what about people live a long time, but they spend a lot of time cooking? Preparing homemade?
Maybe yeah. In the past, the women were more used to to spend time preparing food for all the family. Now we have less time to do that, but still really interesting, to cook food, to prepare some food, some dishes for the family. No?
Fascinating. And how old are you?
I'm nearly 49.
And your
Never
grandma.
have to ask the age to a woman.
Right, it's bad to ask that. But your grandmother is still living?
No,
How old did she live
she
till?
died when she was 92.
92. And did she look fairly young?
She looks really young. My
So-
mom as well. Yeah.
Wow. And then how about your stress level in Sardinia? Is it a high stress, low stress?
No, very low stress.
Low
I think
stress.
that's the secret.
That's
One of the secrets.
Wow.
The food, the stress. The life is very quiet. No pressure.
It's an island, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So you're on the island, you have a lot of fish,
Yeah.
low pace, low stress, but vegetables and healthy food.
Yeah.
And
Like many part of Italy, I think, but maybe in Sardinia, even the air, the water, something is different.
do you drink the water right from the tap, or do you have to
No.
filter it?
When I was young, yes, I used to drink water from the tap. From tap. Now, no.
And then do they drink wine?
Yeah, they drink a lot. Yeah,
But do they ever drink too much, or just enough, just a little bit?
No, just a little bit. I don't think
Wow.
they drink beer.
Beer?
Sardinia, yeah.
Do they make their own beer?
No, not their own beer, but there are many industries, many companies that do beer.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how about like the pesticides, the GMO foods? Do they do that there or no?
I think
Like the
not too
chemicals?
much. I think not too much.
So they're
You have
presu-
to come to move in Sardinia
I'm gonna definitely be going- I'm gonna
to
go
discover
there.
that. To ask them, no?
So they kind of kept the culture there all the time. It's like the culture's been there for. They keep the culture the same. They don't alter it and become more American.
No. They want to keep, the culture to limitate the culture to the island. I mean, we are an island, so we don't have many. In the past, we didn't have many contacts with the other countries.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe
Fascinating. Awesome.
they keep the. They keep they preserve the culture, all the food recipes, and even maybe the vegetable, the plants,
Wow.
Well,
So I will be moving to Sardinia shortly, and I'll be living there. That was interesting, wasn't it? I mean, she definitely does not look 48 or almost 49 years old. But did you hear what she said? Pork. Okay. Now, we've been taught that pork is very bad for us, right? Well, they consume a lot more pork, fish, shellfish, loaded with DHA, okay, iodine, selenium, zinc, copper. Very, very good for anti-aging. Vegetables, artichokes, but not much sugar, not many desserts, and not much pasta. Some bread, some wine, of course, and some beer. Olive oil, of course, and a digestive, okay, some type of berry that actually helps the digestive process. Low stress, they walk a lot, probably to burn off these carbs right here. Now, it's very, very difficult to isolate exactly what specific food or thing is helping Sardinians live longer. But I want to ask you, out of all of these, or some other factors, go ahead and list down below in the comment section.
我们现在来比较面和米哪会更健康。
All right, so I had a question from someone that wanted to know, what is healthier, consuming rice or wheat? So obviously that person has not been watching my keto videos too much. So I'm just going to cover what would be healthier, just so you have the data. You have white rice, okay, and you have white flour. So white rice basically has no hull. That's the very outer coating of the rice. There's no bran, which is the next coating or the next layer, and no germ, okay? So it's just pure carbohydrate. So it's about a 77 on the glycemic index, so it's pretty high. One of the problems consuming white rice is that you develop something called beriberi, which is a vitamin B1 deficiency. Now, when you consume white rice, you deplete more than B1, also some of the other B vitamins, but you really create a B1 deficiency. So beriberi is a neurological disease. It creates all sorts of problems with your nerves, neuritis. So any nerve pain in your body, you want to check a B1 deficiency. So B1 is really important. Also, it's going to create edema and swelling and increased pulse rate, memory problems, all sorts of problems with blood sugars. And I have quite a few videos on vitamin B1 deficiency. And this is why they enrich it, okay, with synthetic B1 and B2 and B3 and folic acid and iron. Of course, they take everything out, but they put a little bit back in there, but realize it's just synthetic. But it does prevent beriberi. All right, so now you have brown rice. What is brown rice? It's basically white rice with no hulls, okay? So it has the bran and the germ, so it's less refined. You take the very outer coating off this rice, and the glycemic index is 68, so it's actually not as bad. All right, so then you have wild rice, okay? Wild rice has the hull, it has the bran, and the germ. It has a lot more nutrition, and it's 52 on the glycemic index. It's a lot lower than these two right here. All right, let's talk about white flour. They're taking out the bran, which is the fiber, taking out the germ, and they're giving you this thing called endosperm, which is the complete carbohydrate. So it's basically, again, it's very similar to white rice as far as the carbohydrate content, because on the glycemic index, it's 77, pretty high, but without the nutrition. So that's why they enrich it with synthetic vitamins, iron, folic acid, B1, B2, and B3. All right, so now we have whole wheat. On the glycemic index, it's 72. It has the bran, the fiber, the germ, and the carbohydrate portion right here. But by definition, you only have to have 51% of these to call it whole wheat. So you could have 49% actually white flour in this product and still call it whole wheat. I don't know if you knew that before. All right, with wheat, you have a little more calcium, more B3, more zinc. With rice, you have less calcium, but more folic acid. Now, of course, when you're talking about wild rice, you're going to have more nutrition in there, okay, than white rice. So you really have to, look at what you're talking about right here. Now, with rice, you don't have any gluten, okay? With wheat, you have gluten. A large population of the planet, it has either a gluten allergy or a gluten intolerance. So they have a problem with gluten. So it creates a lot of digestive issues, okay? Now, rice has phytic acid, Of course, not the white because the phytic acid is going to be in the bran and the hull. Okay, so phytic acid is a chelator. It tends to pull out minerals and block the absorption of minerals. It's an anti-nutrient, so to speak. It is a powerful antioxidant. I have a separate video on that. So certain people can take it as a supplement to help chelate or reduce iron if they have too much iron in the body. But it does have some interesting properties, anti-cancer properties. But the point is that it does tend to block minerals. Okay, so phytic acid is in rice and it's also in wheat. Okay, but it's not as much in the white rice or the refined white flour because it's mainly on the hull or the bran. All right, then we have lectins, which is another compound that certain people are sensitive to, and it's a protective mechanism of the seed. Okay, it's in both rice and wheat. All right, so here's one of the problems. You say, well, oh, I'll just have the white rice because it's healthier. No, it's actually going to spike your blood sugars, okay? Oh, I'll do the brown rice or the wild rice. Well, you have to realize that if you're living in America, 60% of samples tested had traces of arsenic, okay? And that's coming from the pesticides and also like even chicken fertilizer. I mean, it's in that as well, and it gets into the soils. So arsenic is a poison, all right? Wheat doesn't have arsenic. Wheat has glyphosate, so it's been exposed to that Roundup Ready chemical. It's an herbicide. So let's see, what's better, arsenic or glyphosate? Okay, all right, and if you sprout grains, soak them or ferment them, you can decrease the phytic acid and lectins, okay? All right, so if I were to tell you which one is healthier, I'm gonna pick the wild rice. But if you're on the keto plan, you shouldn't be consuming any rice. All right, guys, there you have it. That's your comparison from rice to wheat, and they both have some major drawbacks. So I want to thank you for being here on this, because a lot of people are being exposed to these things on a regular basis and they don't know it. And as far as your liver goes, you're about as healthy as your liver. Your skin is a reflection of the liver. If your liver is bad, your skin's not going to look too good. The liver is a huge organ. It's like 3 pounds. It helps you with digestion. It helps your blood clot. Mainly, it helps you detoxify poisons. It turns poisonous things into harmless things, okay? And so let's dive right in and go through the list. Number 1, you want to avoid soy protein isolates. Here's a big question about soy protein isolates. What do you think they do to isolate this protein from soy? Well, they use chemicals. It's highly processed. They have to go through a whole series of things to extract this concentrated protein. And to do that, they have to use something called hexane. That's a petroleum byproduct. It's a solvent. It's not good for the liver. It's actually a neurotoxin. And so when you look at like diet shakes or diet powders or protein bars or veggie burgers, always read the label. I don't recommend consuming it if it has soy protein isolates. The way I was introduced to soy protein isolates is that I had a series of people that came into my clinic that were on the diet that was called ideal protein. And that was a major ingredient in this so-called healthy ketogenic plan where it had very low carbs, but it also had very, very low fat, okay? And very, very low quality ingredients. And so it was filled with soy protein isolates. And I noticed when people got on that program, when they lost weight, and they did lose weight, they didn't look healthy. And a number of them developed serious like liver inflammation, higher amount of liver enzymes, a lot of digestive problems, and gallbladder issues. And so when they came off those products, it cleared up. They did much better. All right, number 2, fructose. Okay, you have high fructose corn syrup. You have the fructose in fruit. You have something called agave nectar as a sweetener. It's like 70% fructose. And even table sugar is half fructose and half glucose. Now, fructose is a very interesting sugar because it's not metabolized by all of your cells. It's only metabolized by your liver. So anytime you consume fructose, your liver has to deal with this sugar. It is stuck to deal with breaking it down and metabolizing it. And this is why people that consume a lot of high fructose corn syrup, boy, they just develop a fatty liver, way more than if they were going to be consuming just glucose itself. And even people think that agave nectar is so healthy, but it's not, because it contains fructose. But here's the confusing thing. Fructose on the glycemic index is pretty low. It's like 19. Glucose is 100, okay? So if you have a sugar that has half glucose and half fructose, it's going to be right in the middle, like about 74, 75-ish. But the point is that if you are just relying on the glycemic index, okay, that's your principle that you operate off of, and you're like, wow, it's low, I'm going to go ahead and eat it. And you don't understand that the liver has to metabolize that specific sugar. And indirectly, it creates a lot of problems, especially with insulin resistance. Then you can have more awareness, and then you can actually do the right thing by avoiding too much fructose. But the point is that despite being low on the glycemic index, fructose is not a good sugar, especially for the liver, especially if you want to avoid getting a fatty liver. And one more point about this, especially when you're dealing with high fructose corn syrup, all that corn is GMO. And that gives you another level of toxicity like glyphosate, which is an herbicide that's not good for the liver. Instead, use sugar alcohols like erythritol, xylitol, use stevia, monk fruit. All right, number 3, vegetable fats. Now, vegetable fats sound so healthy, don't they? I mean, they're just the fat of vegetables. Well, there's actually not much fat in vegetables, okay? If you look at salad, leafy greens, just look at the nutritional profile and you'll see that there's not much oil or fat in vegetables. So despite being called vegetable oils, it's really grain oils, and it's like bean oils, as in soybean oil. And I'm talking about the corn oil, the soy oil, canola, cottonseed oil. These oils are very processed. They're very oxidating to your tissues, which means they create a lot of inflammation, They're a very fragile oil that's omega-6. An average person in the US consumes about 70 pounds of this vegetable oil. We've kind of done a little switch on these oils about, 30 to 40 years ago, where they switched all of our saturated fats with unsaturated fats, unfortunately. So our membranes now are being built with these unsaturated fats, and it's creating a lot of problems with inflammation, and with that comes a lot of other issues. Not to mention GMO, okay? More glyphosate, which is Roundup Ready in these products. So what you want to do is you want to consume a lot more omega-3 fatty acids, sardines, cod liver oil, salmon, things like that. And just as an FYI, there was a meta-analysis with over 72 different studies that showed that there's no benefit from shifting from saturated fats to unsaturated fats. Zero benefits. In fact, there's a lot of negative things that have occurred. All right, number 4, whey protein powder. Now think about what whey protein powder is. It's a protein in milk and dairy, and it's highly concentrated to be extremely low fat, if not zero fat, okay? And anytime you consume something that's refined out of the normal complex that nature has designed, it comes with a package. And so whey protein is inflammatory. It's a bit toxic to the liver. It increases inflammatory markers. And I remember long ago, before I had any awareness on health, I wanted to gain weight, okay? This was in high school. And so what did I do? I consumed protein powder. And I started chowing that stuff down, and man, did I get sick, because not only was it filled with whey protein powder, it was filled with the next thing on the list, which is maltodextrin. So when you consume protein, make sure you consume it with the fat that's nature has packaged that protein with. But maltodextrin, which is number 5, is in so many foods. It's crazy. It's in all the protein powders as the first ingredient sometimes. Here's the problem with maltodextrin. It's a synthesized or synthetic sugar. and it is higher than glucose on the glycemic index. Okay, it ranges between 110 to 100 and I think 19. It's just off the scale. So you're consuming something that is way worse than sugar for your blood sugars, for your pancreas, for your weight, for your liver. And maltodextrin is put in a lot of vitamins, okay? It's used as a filler. It's used as a drying agent for oils. It's hidden in a lot of so-called keto-friendly foods, which I'm going to be doing a lot of education about. But basically, it makes your liver fattier. And before I forget, I was going to mention they make maltodextrin from corn, wheat, rice, potato, tapioca. And so sometimes it's going to be from GMO ingredients, but you want to avoid it. They even use it in post-workout type gels. It's in Splenda. It's in puddings. It's in protein bars. It's in a lot of different things. All right, number 6, aflatoxins. So you want to stop consuming aflatoxins. Now, what is an aflatoxin? Well, it's a toxin from a certain fungus, which is carcinogenic to your liver. So your liver does not like this. And you're primarily going to find it in peanuts and corn, okay? And especially if it's in a moist, humid environment. Now, if you consume peanuts or peanut butter, the best way to make sure you don't get the aflatoxin is by consuming Valencian peanuts. Valencia peanuts are a lot drier, and they're usually not going to have aflatoxins, especially if you get organic Valencia peanut butter. Now, of course, if you've been watching my videos, you're not going to be consuming corn, but corn is in a lot of products, so you're going to have to watch that as well. And number 7, okay, is MSG, monosodium glutamate. It's in a lot of different forms, including modified food starch, but you really want to start reading the ingredients because they put this in pork rinds. It's in so many foods as a flavor enhancer. They use it in all the fast food restaurants to enhance the flavor because if it wasn't in there, you wouldn't eat as much. But MSG causes you to eat more of it. It's definitely in Chinese food. And so it's a lot of sodium that's hidden. It's not really salty, but you're going to get fluid retention as well after you consume it. But that's not the big problem. The big problem is toxic to your liver. And it's even in like things like cottage cheese, if you're getting like commercial cottage cheese. But I would just recommend just start reading the ingredients. So many of my patients, when I was in practice, after they complained of being sick, I just asked them, when did you start being sick? And what did you eat just before that? And there was usually some ingredient on this list that they consumed that they weren't aware, they didn't make the connection. Now, what about red meat? Is red meat bad for the liver? Well, the answer is if you're consuming grass-fed red meat, it's not bad for the liver unless you have a problem with iron, okay? The thing about iron is that our bodies are not designed to get rid of iron easily. And too much iron can be very toxic to the liver and even cause cirrhosis. And of course, red meat is high in iron. So if you have that problem, then you're probably going to have to avoid red meat. But for most people that don't have a problem with that, red meat is not going to be a problem for your liver if it's quality. Out of all the foods that are good for the liver, the cruciferous family of vegetables are the best thing for the liver. So that would be like arugula, the kale, the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts. So you definitely want to consume those on a regular basis. Now that you have this information, the next video that I'm going to recommend is what to consume or what to do to repair a liver. I put it right here. Check it out. Foods that you will never buy again once you find out what I'm going to talk about. All right, the first one is fake steak.
We're going to talk about the top foods that can ruin and destroy your liver. I'm talking from a lot of experience because I have ruined my liver from the foods that I've eaten in the past.
That have been glued together with something called meat glue, and that glue is called transglutaminase. Now, a couple problems with this glue. They have to rehandle the meat, so there's increased risk of adding more bacteria to the meat.
And they don't have to actually tell you the process of how they make this glue. Originally, it came from blood plasma from either a cow or a pig, and then they combine that with certain things like bacteria, and then they evolved to just fermenting a bacteria to make these enzymes to make this glue. But the problem is all of this is not very transparent. You don't really know how they're making it. Eating anywhere where there's bulk filet mignon, you might want to ask them if they use meat glue. All right, number 2, Parmesan cheese. Now, unfortunately, most Parmesan cheese doesn't come from Parma, Italy, which I could just imagine having that authentic Parmesan cheese from that city is just amazing. But unfortunately, especially in the US, you're going to get a different version of that cheese that is made with different ingredients. It's usually a mixture of cheap cheeses like cheddar cheese or powdered mozzarella cheese with added cellulose and a mold inhibitor. And what's even worse is the FDA makes it legal to sell this fake Parmesan cheese. And that is because the cellulose is from natural sources. It's from wood pulp. Is between 4 to 20%. So that's like 1/5 of the product is wood. So it's definitely a way for companies to make more money with cheaper ingredients. All right, next one is crab sticks, okay? They called it the hot dog of the sea. And I'm talking about imitation crab. Another name for that is surimi. And they take like random fish flesh or fish leftovers. And of course, they add some starch, whether it's from potato, wheat, corn, tapioca, and they mix that in there as well with some MSG to add as a flavor enhancer. And then they have to add crab flavoring because it doesn't taste like crab. And then some protein, but that protein is either an egg white protein, soy protein, and they put some sugar in it, sorbitol, and some soy oil or other vegetable oils. But then we'll just sprinkle a little sodium benzoate as a preservative to make it last longer. And of course, they have coloring to make it look like crab. But the next time you see imitation crab, now you know how they make it. All right, next one on the list is fake tuna. And I'm talking like the pre-cooked canned tuna or even packaged tuna. One company that did some investigation into this found that 21% of the companies they found did not contain actual tuna. It was actually mislabeled. So instead of having tuna, they had some other fish called escula. Escula is known as butterfish or oilfish, and it was banned in Japan from 1977 because they said it was too toxic. And they even have a name for it. It's called X-lax fish because of the side effect, diarrhea or anal leakage. So if you see your tuna like extremely white, like an opaque white, it's not tuna. All right, next one on the list, extra virgin olive oil. And I've done a video just on this topic, but 80% of extra virgin olive oil is not extra virgin. Extra virgin means it's processed very quickly. It's cold pressed. It's a much more high quality process. So you have more antioxidants. And when you consume it, it has a completely different taste and smell. It has a fresh smell and kind of a taste that gives you a little tickle in the back of your throat. And so you know it contains some of the phytonutrients that you need. But it has that fresh grass type taste that is very different than the fake stuff, which is just bland. In fact, I didn't even know what real olive oil tastes like until I went to Italy. But as soon as I found out, now I can identify fake olive oil just by a simple smell test. And about 80% of the extra virgin olive oil is not extra virgin. They add sometimes canola or just a blend of other oils. So it's rancid, it's cooked, it's heated, it doesn't have the phytonutrients. All right, next one, it's maple syrup. Much of the maple syrup that you buy is either made from dark brown sugar or refined white sugar with maple syrup flavoring and artificial colorings. And some of it's even made with high fructose corn syrup. And of course, because these ingredients don't have the natural antioxidants as a preservative, they have to add preservatives like sodium benzoate and ascorbic acid to prevent this syrup from spoiling. Next one on the list is truffle oil. Truffle oil comes from a very expensive mushroom. And so what they do is they found a flavoring molecule to make some other materials taste like truffle oil. And they use this in restaurants a lot. It's a way to save money because the actual oil is very expensive. All right, next one is the powdered instant coffee. Some of the blended ingredients include cereal, caramel, starch, malt, and figs. In addition, instant coffee has something called acrylamide, a potentially very harmful chemical in instant coffee, a potentially very harmful chemical that's created when the beans are roasted. And instant coffee has more than double the amount as other types of coffee. You know, it can affect the nervous system. It can increase the risk of cancer if you're consuming it on a regular basis. All right, the next one, and I have done a video on this, wasabi, okay? The vast majority of wasabi in the US is simply a mixture of horseradish, hot mustard, and green dye. It doesn't actually come from the wasabi plant, so it is fake. There's been a report that up to 95% of the wasabi sold is not real wasabi, and I'm talking about all over the world, even in Japan. And this is because wasabi is very difficult to grow, and it's extremely expensive. It's like $160 a kilogram. That's at wholesale prices. And when you take fresh wasabi and you pulverize it, you grind it up into a paste, it really only lasts for like 15 minutes. And what I mean by lasting is it basically loses its flavor. But that's not going to happen with horseradish. Horseradish is going to last a lot longer. And the last one is commercial guacamole. Just because it says it's guacamole doesn't even mean it has a lot of avocado in it, unfortunately. These imposters are made with skim milk, vegetable oil, water, emulsified egg yolks, and a slew of gums and gels. And it's even thickened with isolated soy protein. And of course, to make it look green, they add food dye. And so some of this commercial guacamole only has like 2% avocado. Incredible. All right, so the next video I really think you should watch is on olive oil. There's a lot more to know about this, so I put it up right here. Check it out.
今天时间到了，我们今天几个视频还是都看完了的。这里面也告诉我们自己去分辨了啊，就是米跟面它各有一些什么成分在里面。然后呢，那个小麦为什么说意大利人他们能长寿吃面食？那其实他不是吃很多的。
Today, we're going to show you the best
还有这个
7
意大利
foods
的
that you
面，
need to be eating to
What
clean
you
out
think contributes most
many
to
people
longevity
don't realize
from
about the
people
liver
that
is
live
is
in
they
the blue
think
zone.
it's a storage place for
So if-
toxins when it normally does not
最深
store
干的气的
toxins.
食物，
It
我们
gets
一定
rid
要
of
冷了。
toxins. Now, toxins are stored in the fat
好多
cells.
是
So
冷的，
if you
这
have a
个
fatty
对食
liver,
就讲的，你
chances
就
are
不要
you
这
will
么
have toxins.
今天时间又到了，我们明天继续。